Hi, welcome back. We left off last week with halfway through. Mostly what we discussed was on the conceptual side and the customer experience theoretical side. Let's maybe look at a little bit more on the practical side that can be useful. So before I start off, just want to recap what we went through was basically discussed a little bit about the customer experience, what it is, why and how and when, and then we went into customer personas and then customer journey map. And once you have the customer journey and once you have identified the customer, a way to come up with the strategy and how I look at it is through people, process, and systems. We discussed a little about people. We discussed a little bit about systems. What we left off there was on the processes. Before that, I just want to clarify one thing. I think one of the questions that things that we discussed was I was asking, do you reply, when do you reply your customers? And at that point they said, oh, when I'm home, whatever time I'm free, though that could be in the night. So at that time I mentioned that's a little bit unprofessional and that it's hard to maintain once your business starts growing. So just want to clarify on that. It's not me saying don't reply to your customer at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the night. It's just that it might set a precedent, which you might not be able to cater to at a later point. But I also understand as startups, as with ground level and you're doing, you have to, do that service to the customer. So it's certainly not saying that don't do it. It's more think ahead also how that can be sustained or what you will do to manage it. And another point that we discussed last week was when we were talking about very happy customer experiences, Suresh Hamidias, the fact that people were surrounding him asking him to help, and then Brinda mentioned that's exactly opposite to what I want and how to manage that. So again, the principle of people, process, and systems. So people, if you have a trained, experienced person, by the cues of the movements, they will know which customer to approach and give a hands-on help, or which one to stay back a bit. So that's from the people side. If it's a process side, you can have a processing place where when the customer walks in, you can ask them, hey, do you want someone to basically give you a butler service or not? Or you can have a process internally where you have to say each flow area, these many people have to be roaming around it, so they are approachable to someone as when and if. So, and in terms of a system, you can, again, these are just example off the top of my head. You could have a button for the customer to press every 5 meters. So like I said, you can't manage to individuals that preference level. It's very difficult, right? So that's where these people, process and systems come into place. You can put in measures that addresses or try to address different types of customers, but differentiating the service that you offer at that time. Okay, so coming back to today, the processes, and one of the questions was, do you have a SOP for your company? So SOP is really important. Having the right systems, having the right processes, having the right people mean it. If there is a shift of things, if people go, if things change, there is still a foundation in place where nothing falls apart, that you still produce the consistency. So SOP is one of that, where every action that you might do internally and externally are mapped. So so the next person also knows even if it's 2 people doing it, they will do the same thing. So that's very important to have that consistency, because end of the day, consistency to customers experience matters a lot as well. But when the companies grow and grow and grow, and the SOPs become stricter and tighter and more compliant, that becomes a little bit oxymoron to customer experience, because you might want to do something to the customer, you want to give them a surprising experience, but your SOP might be blocking that. So in terms of SOP, what you need to know, it's really important, especially if you're in the industry where finances or legal matters are handled. It's important. But always remember that SOP is not a static document, it's a dynamic document. If you want to serve a customer outside the normal SOP, you just need to change the SOP. Because if it's a good, if it's a valid and thing to do, you need to amend the SOP. I bring this up because a lot of my experience with customer service and customer experience is a lot of the time they say, no, our company, we can't do this. And can't is a really bad term when it comes to customer service and customer experience. So you might not be able to do something to a customer because of a resource issue or a practical logical issue, but just for the fact that your SOP says don't do this is not a reason, provided it's nothing of course but something extra. That means instead of saying no to the customer, you go back and you amend the amend the SOP. That's how you would not block yourself by your own SOP. Because
so basically it's better to have review your SOPs maybe like yearly.
Absolutely.
Most of the companies I think will have only the same. Yeah.
Correct, because if the risk of not reviewing your SOP means you are going to be outdated very quick, very fast. So that definitely, it's, people should know it's a living document. It's not a static document. It's a living document where you add, reduce, remove, and maintain it so that you are. I mean, companies do that, but you should focus it in terms of the customer, that this shouldn't hinder how you give your customer the experience. SOP shouldn't, unless it's a legal or some complication, it shouldn't be the reason why you can't provide some service to your customer. That's again, SOP, customer satisfaction metrics, and your internal KPIs are there to help you, but sometimes those three comes in conflict of each other. So your KPI, for example, the team that it's in operations, their KPI is nowhere near to satisfying the customer. They will do, okay, produce this much or this, but that there should be in some level, some mechanism to include the customer satisfaction, customer experience metrics in throughout the across the board in your company, even if they're not customer experience. Otherwise, it's still that, like we discussed, the silos and the unifying effect won't happen if each team is purely focused on their KPIs and their SOPs, and then customer experience is left to get the customer satisfaction metrics up without the support that they need, which is like trying to get into a boxing match with your hands tied behind your back. So that the SOP, the KPIs, and the customer satisfaction metrics should support each other and not hinder each other.
So basically, you're looking at something common vertical along all three processes.
Correct. It's not easy because they are very different in purpose and naturally they are different, but you should have some linkage. If your operations team purely has operation related KPIs, they will never help you bridge the gap for experience. So you need to have some components of that in every KPI. Okay, moving on to delivery, and this is the most important part. You can promise everything, but then delivery is what exactly matters. The good thing about delivery and good thing about customer experience, because we've spoken about a lot of challenges, but one of the good thing I would say about customer experience for you as organization is you set the guidelines, you set the rules, right? For example, you decide that I will only respond to customers between 8 in the morning and 5 in the evening, right? So you have the scope to set the borders and the rules, basically. But you need to be clear with that to the customer. So if someone comes to you on a Saturday, they should get auto reply saying our responding times are Monday to Friday between 8 to 5. There's absolutely nothing wrong in not being servicing customer 24 hours. Sometimes you think the opposite way and we have to reply at whatever time. It's good, but it's not sustainable when you start growing and starts getting bigger and there's more people involved. You can't do that. Of course, you can do it once you reach the level where you have a 24-hour call center. But in your customer experience, and this hourly thing is one example, you are in control of it, but the scope of it, the rules of it, and the parameters of it. So you need to be very clear with it, and you need to be clear with that to the customer as well. So you manage the expectation, and customer experience is all about managing the expectation of the customer. If I was a customer and I send something at 10 in the night, and if I don't get a reply, I'm fine. But if I get a reply saying, look, our working hours are this time, we'll get back to you in this time, that's even better. It's more clear and it's more professional as well. That's the part that we spoke about, where you reply people at 8, 9. If I'm the customer, I'm happy about it on one side, but then on the other side, so informal, they are like replying at random times. Are they like a very professional company? I'm just saying, not that everyone thinks that way, but you leave space for that. So that's why you need to clearly define the rules, the ground rules, and what you are going to offer, and work with it. And what you promise, you have to deliver. That is where a lot of the unhappiness comes from. You have to deliver what you promise. And one thing that I see a lot these days is the companies are insulting the customer's intelligence as well. So a lot of the time, these customer replies are, they would say, for example, a furniture company I had, there was delays. There's like, oh, this because of the lockdowns, we couldn't do. Like, some of those are valid, but some of them are, I know they are not being honest with me, and I'm like, why do you think I'm a idiot to, like, so you have to, and especially in Sri Lanka, where people find that, I find that there is a lot of disregarding the intelligence of the customer. So you need to be upfront. There is no problem being upfront. You don't have to lie. You can be upfront. But what you say is up to you, because again, it's your rules, your parameter, right? So if you instead of saying we will deliver within 3 days and the delivery goes on the 4th day, it's so much better to say within 7 days and making sure it goes in that time frame. But and for some reason, Sri Lanka has recently become a very overpromise, underdeliver marketplace in a lot of things, and it's actually taken for like granted. Like, a lot of the experience now I have is when they say next week, I know it's not next week. I know it's 2 weeks later. So in Sri Lanka, there is that scope to correct it. That's why I keep saying there's no recognized. If you think of excellent customer service, like you said that week, yeah, you have your experience, I have my experience, but there is no common entity that you would say, look, these are the guys in Sri Lanka that is known for their customer experience. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there is. So there is scope, but importance is communication. You have to communicate. A lot of this delivery, again, I'm bringing that because that's something I've faced a lot. The day they promise, on that time, nothing. I ask, hey, what time are they coming? Oh, we have running into a delay. It's tomorrow. That's fine. As a person, I know that there are going to be complications. But be upfront. Don't wait till the customer asks you why. Say, sorry, we ran into some trouble. We won't be able to deliver on the time that we said. Please do. We will do it tomorrow, and make sure you do it tomorrow. So that's something that's very important. Delivery, that you're honest. Honest doesn't mean that you tell everything that's going on behind your door, but you have to be honest and not insult the customer's intelligence. You have to treat them like with respect, and that don't try to give other excuses, because it end up making the situation much, much, much worse. Because a lot of people will genuinely understand the situation and be somewhat this thing, other than, unless whether you're being lied to, or you talk to you like, oh, you don't know this is what's happening, or whatever. So delivery is very important. It's communication, it's consistency. Today, if you deliver on the 3rd day, it's really important. Next time also you do it on the 3rd day. So let's say you say, like we discussed, we are giving you in 7 days, but you do it in 3. That's good. But next time also, the customer wants it on not the 6th day, even though it's within the timeline. So consistency for me, customer experience. If I had to give 2 most important aspects of customers experience, customer service is efficiency and consistency. So I will again come back to these items in a later part, but those two are very important. Monitoring and evaluation. This is again where I don't know. Remember we discussed last week that you have to start recording and collecting the data that you get from your customers. So whether you have a system or whether you start recording it on an Excel, right? So you won't be able to monitor and evaluate unless you have that data. You have to like I think the example that we discussed was you sell black and white and some 5 customers call and ask for red. If you don't know, record it, you don't know. So what I can do is I can give you, so when you are recording this, a good way to record it is in, you can record it in 5 different criteria. One could be inquiry. So these are customers contacting you, ask, do you have this available? Do you have red? Do you have this? What is the price of this? What is the long delivery time, like that? So it's basically for inquiries that you are being contacted. Number 2 is actions or requests, where what they are contacting for you requires more than just giving an answer, some other activity. For example, you could be a subscription service. They might ask you to go to a higher level on the subscription or a lower level. Or they're calling to say, I've got this product, I want it in red, or I've got this service, I want to get this additional service. So anything that, not just answering, not an inquiry, but you are required to also do a action or a support a request. Third one is an incident. This is where you've given a service or product and something has gone wrong. It could be the delivery was late, the product was damaged, something has gone wrong. That incident is, in a way, you have your SOP and your process to make some deliver a service. Something somewhere has gone wrong, out of character in that process. Fourth is a complaint. Is when customers are complaining. I guess it's quite clear in the description itself. And number 5 is a recovery, right? So recovery is an unhappy customer that you find out later. Usually is this recovery is the difference between a complaint is the complaint is on something that's ongoing, whereas a recovery is after the fact. Something has gone wrong, it's after the fact. Most of the time we are aware of recoveries come to us through surveys. When they put a 0 and this is so bad, but the transaction and everything is over, but we find someone still extremely unhappy. So if you categorize your interactions with customers, there's multiple ways to do it. This is something I am familiar with. Then all you need to do is end of the month, filter incidents. You see, okay, if there are 10 incidents, you might see 5 are because of the same thing going wrong. That's when you have that data to fix that problem. Same way, complaint could be 5 different reasons. So you fix that with a request, or the second item we discussed about action. That again, if similarly, if there's a high number on the same thing, then that's why you look at, okay, is this something that we can automate? Instead of the customer contacting us and us spending the resources of a customer service person to do that, can we automate that? Like, for example, if it's an app, if you have an app company has an app or website, is something that can be quickly done, automated to the customer. Because customer service now is about automation. It's, if you notice, it's when has gone from the customer service agent helping you to you going online and doing everything yourself. So in that sense, if you record it actions, you can know it's not necessarily automate, but you can also figure out, okay, if there are, for example, 10 actions and 5 of them is returning of your stuff. Let's say return the product. Are the products same in the 5? So that's why the information is very critical and very same way. If you look at the inquiry, if you have a lot of the same one, okay, let's put this in FAQ. You get all the inquiries that come your way, get all those questions, put the answers, put FAQ on your website. Saves you customers time of calling you, saves you the time of someone answering the call. Again, people don't know the cost of customer service. It's actually cost. It's in a organization also, customer service only has a cost center. There's no profit on customer service. So reducing a call is saving money in a way. In terms, it might not be literal money, but it's the resources that you put on that plus the time. So it's, for me, one of the takeaways I think the original one was having that mindset as a company, as an individual in the company for customer experience. And the second part of this is data. Like I said, there are companies that provide these tools from a basic subscription to hundreds of thousands for large organization. It's up to the people if they want to, but you could purely be on your Excel also. But there are platforms where, let's say, if they contact you via, message you via Instagram, it comes to you on that platform, so you can reply. So everything is linked and comes. That's the benefit of having a customer service tool, is it's all one place. And then when your shift is over, the next person can come and sit and handle it. So there is that seamlessness with the tool. But again, startups, I know it's not a priority spending or priority expense, but as and when you grow, it's something to look at it purely for the benefit. And if you just look at what I just said, I think those are valuable information that is probably slipping out of a lot of the companies right now, whether it's an inquiry or a complaint, right? Because complaint and recovery is highly dissatisfied customers. And that last week we talk about Sudesh with Hamidia and me with my trainer, how we can be advocates. The negative side of that is far more like it catches fire, right? And especially in a marketplace like Sri Lanka, Colombo, even Uber Eats, we don't order it off most of the time it's someone said, this place is good, you are going for that. So in Colombo and Sri Lanka in general, how the marketplace is, word of mouth is not something that is outdated. It's actually a go-to thing for a lot of us, really. But whether it's a Facebook group, all the Facebook group, or whether it's your family, first thing is you ask someone, right? Or in your WhatsApp friends group. So having an unhappy customer is so detrimental to your company. And I know if you're the startup companies and all that, if their background is not customer experience, a lot of the time, sometimes the attitude might be, I can't deal with them, let them not be my customer. But it is not just losing one customer, it's a huge domino effect that is going to be really painful if you don't get a hold of it. So that is something that you need. So if you think, okay, this customer paid, got it, now he's complaining, but I don't have to deal with him because the transaction is over, that's again a big mistake, because that really could hurt you. Especially when so for my experience, my company was huge in the sense that maybe we could afford to not because it's a global company, but not organize it, all organize it. And we didn't, by the way, even the single customer recoveries, we handled it. So when we have a recovery, we call them, we ask them why, what happened, how can I correct it? If we could correct it, we'll correct it. If they have a suggestion to improve it, we improve it. And then 1 month, go back to them and say, here, we took your feedback, we fixed this issue. I think that's the ultimate Mount Everest of customer experience, when and the customer feels so valued, because a lot of the time when we complain or post complaining about something, it's getting out the frustration. But on top of that, if this company comes back to me and said, look, we read what we heard you, we heard what you said, we tried, we looked internally, and we actually came up with this solution, and thank you very much. And if you can engage a customer into that level, that is the peak of customer experience. So monitor and evaluation is it's monitoring and evaluation based on all this data that is recorded, what's going right, what's going wrong, and how to fix it. Again, we talked about processes is feedback, which is, I mean, we've spoken how important that is, having a two-way communication with the customers as well. So feedback, again, you can ask for feedback and then ask feedback for the sake of, but no, you have to, actually look at it. I mean, feedback could be, if you're 100 customers, they don't know your core product like you do, so they might be way off, but you at least have to have a look at it. And if you can acknowledge the feedback to a customer saying, oh, we thank you for this, we looked at this, we will certainly, even if you don't do anything about it, we will take it up internally and we'll see where we can improve. I think whoever sends a feedback will be over the moon, because these are the little touch points that everyone needs to focus on. Opportunity, yes, some are time consuming, but there is huge reward in that as well. The next point I have is data interpretation. A lot of the time, data, for me, data is interpretation. You could have data, 5 different people could look at it in 5 different ways. So it's really important that how you interpret the data, especially when we talked about these cases. Let's say that, again, going back to that example, that 5 people ask for red, which they don't have, right? You could interpret that as 5 people want red, or they were just curious. I mean, again, I'm just putting it out. So interpretation is quite important as well, just purely because you have the data. You can't blindly do things about it, because the data might be telling you to do A, and if you misinterpret it, you might be doing B, which is also going to be not an ideal situation. So data interpretation is equally important. The data interpretation becomes easier and clearer the more you put effort in capturing the data. The more information you have when you capture the data. So if someone is answering a call, and if they put under description what this call was about, if they put 1 line versus 5 lines, it's more clearer. When it comes to the time where you interpret it, it's more clearer. Do you have a question? I feel like you have a question.
Just having examples in my head.
Right.
Can you say something?
That's good. You can share with me as well, because I'm going with very generic examples. So if you have anything, please feel to stick. So the data interpretation is critical, in the sense that doing it the wrong way, you might be going the opposite way what you need to go in terms of the direction of customer experience. Finally, it's continuous improvement. This is the buzzword of 2020 these days. Everyone keeps talking about continuous improvement, but if you really ask, do people know what continuous improvement is? And why they do continuous improvement is they might not be very clear, because again, like the customer experience mugs and shirt, continuous improvement is also being thrown around like, we need to do this, but are you actually doing it?
I don't know, my personal opinion is most people, they get so comfortable with the process that once they think that something works, they think that's it, and they don't improve, right?
That is the worst.
I think here, I don't know any others, but I think most Sri Lankan organizations or most Sri Lankan workers would, once they see that something works for them in a certain way, they will not see anything else.
Absolutely. And again, one of the examples we discussed was that Apple going into licensing from iPod. 10-20 years later, iPod is dead. There's no iPod. It's the licensing that now with their core business, I mean, part of their core business. So if you get into that comfort zone, you are going to be outdated. That's why this continuous improvement, like you said, some people get into comfort zone, someone is going to go past you, and the technology, the tech, the everything might be outdated. And when you say continuous improvement, where customer service is involved is, or the customer experience side is, we know what the customers are complaining about, right? If there are 5 of them are complaining about this switch here is not, I'm going with very generic examples, then it's the duty of the customer service to go to the operations team and say, look, we've had so many these things about this switch, we need to fix it. That is also continuous improvement. And where a lot of the companies have issue is the operations guys gets offended, like, oh, you're
it's not
finding
my
my
problem.
fault, you're finding fault. It's not. That's why I said this has to be done is a overall level, not a customer service team can't do it alone. And this is not pulling you up for this is improvement process. So that's it's again a struggle against the human nature, and this is even the bigger organizations go through this. Every time I come and say, because I am the bad news deliverer, because customer experience gets this information. I'm the one who goes to I got shouted 5 times because this didn't work. Look, you need to do something. And within the organization, you need to be open to that process and not take it personally like something went wrong. If the delivery, let's say the delivery is wrong, and I think you mentioned if the delivery is a third party, right? Then if your data shows 10 out of 6 issues is because it's delivery, either you have to look at changing the delivery partner, or maybe strict SLAs. A lot of the time in our organizations, or the bigger it is, you sign SLAs and you put penalties for not delivery. I'm not saying anyone can do it, but there are levels that you can go to. So, but you can't do that if you don't know that 6 people are having issues with the delivery, and that is why the recording of information or recording of data that you get from customers is the rest of the steps won't work if you don't have that thing. And I'm not saying to buy an expensive customer customer service tool. You can do it in Excel, but you have to start somewhere, and you have to start gathering that data. Otherwise, what you do with your product and services, you are in your own bubble, and you think this is what's good, this is what bad, we should do, without any valuable, openly, freely available information that you have at your fingertips.
And your best might not be the best.
Sorry?
Your best might not be the best.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because at the end of the day, customers are the ones who are using it. They will have more input than you. Because even if you have a UX team doing all the testing, it's 3 people doing a testing for a week, whereas your customers might be 1,000 customers doing it for months. It's even that is higher volume, and all those internal testing and all that is with a bias cap. You're always thinking this is perfect, this is good, this is the best, whereas the customers will have a more critical feedback. And again, as an owner, as a shareholder, as a CEO, you should be open to that criticism. It's not criticism, it's feedback. It might not be positive feedback or what you want. You have to listen to that. And that's why I also started the step 1 is for that person to be answering or hearing customers. They will, that's how you feel the pulse of your customers. So I go to continuous improvement. It's improvement of your customer service. That means if you're answering a call in 5 rings, you improve to answer it in 2. If you are getting back, replying to email on 2 days, doing it in 1 day. Sending, for example, some of the KPIs we had was within 4 hours, we had to send the first response. Within 1 day, we have to do a full resolution. Within 24 hours, and 90% of the full resolution should end there. That means they can't come back. So those are the KPIs, right? So that's for customer service. But continuous improvement applies across the board. But customer service gives that feedback, give it to that department. Your delivery, there's something wrong with the delivery, fix it. There's something wrong with the product switch, fix it. That again is continuous improvement. So you talk about best practice and being comfortable with this thing. It's having your best practice, looking at what the next practice is, making that next practice the best practice, and then looking for the next practice. So it's a continuous thing that you don't stop. And I see continuous improvement, especially these last few years, thrown around like but in practicality and in application, I don't know if everyone does it the right way. Because for continuous improvement, you have to have that data. You have to have the plan. Then you have to do evaluate, monitor whether it's working right. And then reinvent the whole wheel. So you just non-stop reinventing the wheel. So moving on, so we've discussed about how you can have your strategies, how you start from identifying the segments, then their route, and then using process and people and systems to complete that strategy. So next part of it is in what I can tell you is the components of customer experience management. So this is broken down into 3 areas. First thing is customer knowledge. You would hear this word voice of the customer. It's again that listening to the customer. I would say if logistics and if you have that rapport with the customer, once in a while, take a customer out for coffee, ask them what's going on. I mean, you can't randomly invite a customer, but I'm saying that's why I said like logistics and everything permitting, you have to have those one-on-one conversations. You have to understand where can I improve, what did I do right, what did I do wrong. You need to know what you did right, so you keep doing it and you better it, and you need to know what you did wrong so you can do away with that. So voice of the customer is absolutely important, and just because you reply to customers doesn't mean that's the voice of the customer. Voice of the customer actually means that you go out specifically to get more information from the customer. Focus group is a little bit old-fashioned. Whether it's focus group, whether it's having a one, if it was me, I would have. If someone stay close to me, are you free to have a chat coffee? And then I would pick their brains about what their whole experience from finding out about my product till the using point. How did you feel? What went wrong? What I could do right? So voice of the customer, customer experience people should know that they are the voice of the customer internally. They are the ones who hear the customer's voice and need to convey that to the decision makers and the other teams. Net Promoter Score, I'm sure everyone would have heard the Net Promoter Score. We'll come to a little bit on that in my last slide. It's actually it's a part of a survey. When a survey goes out, there are some questions and answers. So Net Promoter Score is part of that. There's a global standard for Net Promoter Score. What this means is how likely are you to promote your company? How likely is the customer to promote your company? So it's important to know whether they are absolutely where in that scale they are. Then there is customer intelligence. That's where more like that. They ask for about 5 red things. Yes. The intelligence of what you gather through the interactions with the customer. Customer experience journey map, which we already discussed, and internal branding. So internal branding, again, what we discussed was having that mindset, the branding, not just the mark. You have to have that customer service branding, because that will eventually end up being the customer experience. So customer well-being, the next step is customer care, customer satisfaction, service excellence. Those are again more to do with the surveys, what the customers tell you, what you hear, and what you want to do for the customers. And if you look at other things, being customer centric, so every step of a decision making process, you take customers as an important factor. That is being customer centric. Whether you're doing your internal budgets, whether you're doing something irrelevant, not directly with the customer, taking into customers' voice and opinion is being customer centric. Customer complaint resolution recovery. Again, I can't emphasize how important this is. For me, one of the most gratifying moments as a customer experience person is when I deal with a recovery. That means they have had some really unhappy experience. They have given across the board zeros on the survey. That's why I'm contacting them to recover them. So it's usually in my like, the thing that you least likely want to do, because they're already unhappy. They're already going to shout at you. The transaction is also over. That nothing you can do to change it. But there are times where I've spoken to them, I've understood where they're coming from, explained what I can from my side, taken their feedback and said, this is what I'm going to do with it, this is what I get back. And when the phone is hung up at the end, they are almost an advocate, right? I mean, as a customer experience professional, for me, that is the most gratifying. Not doesn't happen often, but that for me, that's the most gratifying. Where I pick up the phone, like even I'm like, I can't be like, I don't want to do this, but eventually they say, Sandeep, thank you. It's really good that you called. It's clear maybe this was something my misunderstanding. It could be they are unhappy because the customer expectation is different to what we offer. So it's really important. You can't leave a dissatisfied customer. You either have your happy, satisfied customer or no customer. But if you have a dissatisfied customer, it's gonna create a lot of toxicity to your business. So you need to, however unpleasant or most job that you do least likely to do, you have to do it. Because the detrimental effect of that, not addressing that, could be really bad. So again, user experience, customer touch point, and customer effort. I will talk about customer effort a little bit later as well. So these are again more to do with how the customers touch and feel their well-being. So these topics under customer well-being is mostly handled by the customer service team. So they make sure whether you're happy or unhappy, you are being looked after and your well-being is being looked after as a customer. So these points are something that if you haven't focused on, what it says on the customer touch point is, are you 100% aware of all the touch points? For example, yes, website, your social media, Instagram page. Are you aware? Are there touch points that are left unmanned that you're not aware? So those things is something that you need to look at to ensure that their customer is looked after well. And finally, profitability. End of the day, customer experience is not a feel-good factor or do you do it for happiness. End of the day, it is to make your company profitable. And don't misunderstand I'm saying about customer is right, customer do this to customer. But of course, eventual goal is profitability, right? Yes, customers' interactions will be enriched if we have this attitude, but for us, we have to make it profitable. The profitability will come when you shift your customers to the advocacy state and they are spreading the word and you're getting free advertising from those customers. So whatever these do, you have to keep profitability in mind as well, not just because I spoke for 2 hours about customer experience, blah, blah. It's not just that. End goal is for you also to increase your profitability, but it might not be short-term profitability. And I think we discussed this as well. Jeff Bezos, his line is customer obsession over short-term profitability. So you obsessed about the customer, sacrifice maybe short-term profitability, but in the long run, that obsession will pay off in profits. So if you go point by point, again, experiential marketing means having your customers over. Even the thing about having a coffee with the customer is, I could categorize under this. Customer advocacy. CRM is customer relationship management. What do you do? What do you have in place? And if a customer becomes a high-end customer, loyalty, how do you differentiate your service to them, which is very important, right? When a passenger pays the ticket price of a business class, he wants the differentiated service from economy class, right? So if you identify customers as key customers, it shouldn't be just for your internal benefit. If you are telling your customer you are a key customer to me, you should show it from the different service, differentiating the service, right? This doesn't mean you give something totally different. Again, it's your rules. You just make sure that that customer sees something different. But internally, it might be a slight extension of what you do. For example, it could be normal customers can reach you Monday to Friday. Key customers can reach you 7 days a week, right? Again, it's an example, but I'm saying you differentiate what you have with an addition. So that's very important to key customers, because if you say I'm a key customer and you treat me the same as everyone else, I'm going to be more annoyed. I would have rather be like, again, this is insulting the customer's intelligence in a way. That's what I meant when I say customer don't, because customers know, they know what I'm getting, and if they put get your email saying you're our loyal, you're our top 10, and we are going to be, you're going to be a key customer, it has to be visible. So that's CRM, branding we discussed, customer lifetime value, customer lifestyle management. I won't go too much. I think everyone, you guys are aware of that. But customer experience is used in the life cycle and lifetime to cross-sell and upsell. Your entry to more opportunity to cross-sell and upsell is through customer experience. You building that rapport with the customer. Again, with customer loyalty, customer community, customer references, co-innovation is, like I said, is the highest you can reach. That is where you get their feedback, you work with them and improve the product. That is so difficult. It's not one of the easiest things to do, but if goal should be to ultimately reach that level where you are participating. Online, there's customer communities talking about your product. So those are the, at that stage only that the profitability will more visibly show on your balance statement when you with the customer experience. Any questions on this? Just customer experience, I think we'll be finishing it up. So look at what you offer now and look at your customer. I think this whole presentation was to have your mindset a bit more open to customer experience, and also to get you to look into it. Like, did you look into your customer personas, the journey map, the touch points, or the touch point filters? And once you have a look at this, once you come up with a strategy, these are sort of parts of that. Okay, so how you treat your customer, personalized. Personalized is meaning you have to differentiate certain level. Biggest thing that everyone thinks is putting dear Sandeep in the email is being personalized. It's really not. Like I said, that's part of this. People are not going to be fooled with that. You don't even need a human to do that. You can now put systems where you put dear and combine with the name on that and send it. So that's not being personalized. So you have to really be personalized. It means for me, in my experience, when I spoke to customers, I am someone who likes to read up on a lot of things. So when I speak of a customer in Australia and based on his tone and stuff, I will what happened to the match yesterday, you guys saw. So have a little bit of, and 99% of the time when someone calls you as a customer, they will give a slightest indication on how their day is going or whether they have something. So it's important that you pick up on the right, and again goes back to selecting the right people. It's not a job for an introvert. I don't want to talk to people. So if you have the right people, they will pick up on this cue, talk about that, build that rapport. So that is the personalized part. Expressive meaning you get the customer to be expressive. You give them the experience. They are expressive. They are going to Google and putting a rating on you. They are going to whichever platform they can. They are expressing more openly. So that's something that you need when you communicate. You need to bring out that expressiveness from the customer. Authentic. A lot of the time we try to be like, this is the model to be write an email to a customer. This is no. You have to find the right fit for your company. If you look at Wendy's, which is a fast food chain in US, their Twitter, they are using filth. They are using, like, they'll put something on McDonald's and this is a garbage truck. Filth, not the bad words, but they are very casual with their wordings. It's banter. So they are also they are fast food where when 2 o'clock in the morning when you're after club and that kind of place. So they are being authentic in their own way, which I can't say it's right or wrong. So it's more important. I think it's more valid that you're authentic that way rather than trying to be some fake person or trying to follow some other company's way. So you have to find the right personality for your company in a way. So your personality is what is communicated with the interactions with customers. And again, it comes to people's experience as well. So for me, when I was talking to a CEO of a company in Australia, I would say, "Dear Mark." But if I'm talking to the counter staff in India, I would have to say, Rahul sir, right? Because it's a cultural differences, and you pick it up and you have to be, so you need to manage that. But overall communication should be authentic, and you have to find the company's personality that can give that authenticity. Being relevant, being customized. Customized is, again, the difference between personalized and customized. Customized is, let's say you're having a transaction, right? For example, let's say you're a bank, you were missed a loan payment or whatever. But then being customized with that service means, okay, giving 10 more days, or because of that particular individual's transaction, you find a different way to get that money, different timeline. So instead of, no, our company is a 10-day policy or whatever, like just saying this is our policy, as and again, you set the rules, as and when where you can, customizing the transaction to the customer, whether it's what I just said or whether it's other way, it's finding a way to customize it. Timely, I think this is very clear. There is no point doing something 10 days after. Do it now, do it immediately. At least the part where you say it'll come in 10 days has to be done now. So it's not that you have to timely do everything, but have the timely responses, timely communications, and the customer is aware. Shared and lasting, it's good that it's together. That means all these transactions there is some involvement from the customer side. It could be, you could have your website where customers log in. It's a trick to, not trick, it's a mechanism to get the customer details on your records and stuff, is having a portal in your website where they have to register, they can look at their accounts. The logic behind that is, in the meantime, you're gathering so much data on the customer, their usage patterns, their login patterns, their details and everything. So shared and lasting means that you have where you get the customers involved in things, and it's not a one-off transaction. You try to drag that on, or extend that relationship as well. Clear, conversational, valuable before the sale, valuable after the sale. I think it's very clear. I mean, these are showing your value before. So before meaning you have to show it on your website through testimonials of other customers or your displays. You have to show the value, and afterwards it's the after sales where you still show the value by saying we didn't cut off just once you purchase. We continue to give you the service. One of the things that has personally been very successful for me, and because for me at one point in my time, getting customer satisfaction scores was part of my KPI as so for me. And no one replies a survey, right? No one replies a survey. World average is about 6%. So what I did was like, okay, how can I do this? So what I did was, good customers I handle. 2 days later, I call them up and say, hey, you had this 2 days ago. Did you get your answer? It's satisfactory. How good is it? Are you happy? Can I do anything else? They were like, wow, this thing finished 2 days ago, and this guy is calling me again to ask me, is everything good? And I say, oh, if everything is good, I'm going to send you the survey. Can you just answer that as well? For me, it was a win-win-win, because I get what I wanted. The customer feels like there's extra attention on them, and the company is also getting a loyal customer. I'm not saying loyal, but they are also very happy. So I think that's a good method to do. Keep a small, quick way to keep people happy is, now everything, life in this modern age is so transactional. You do something, buy something, that's over. But then to 2 days, you shouldn't put it off too later, or do it immediately the day after either. Give a cooling off period, and then when you go, it's for me, they have been like, what is this? Like, I've never had this experience. I mean, there are companies that do that. I'm not saying I was the first one to do it, but I personally found a lot of value in that, doing that little thing. So you can find out your own way. You can have an event for everyone 10 days after. But again, this is probably, for me, what I can say, one of the cheaper, quicker, easier method was, for me, was this, to keep everyone happy. So that is valuable after the sale. Clear, visible value. That means, again, that communication part, saying this is our product, this is the time you will get it, this is the price. There is no price. There is not going to be something added on when you check out. There, in a delivery, there is no, you have to pay the delivery fee in the product, and so you are clear. This is our value. Even after service, this is our contact center. This is information you can access to. Whatever. Very be clear. Don't lie. Never lie. Never try to glorify it. Then actually, because again, that is insulting the customer's intelligence. Because people they know what they want to know. So that's that. Emotionally engaging. I think we've spoken a lot about this as well. This it's that emotional connection that is really important. Unexpected. This again, my call 2 days later is an example for this unexpected, because they are done with the transaction, they are done with us, but then, oh wow, this guy is asking if I'm happy, did I get everything, do I need anything more, whatever. So that tends to, this unexpected thing has a big upturn on that. And of course, like we said, profitable. That's the end goal. And the last thing I want, which we spoke about the customer service metrics. I said I will talk about it a little bit more. So there is 3 important aspects. One is Net Promoter Score. Again, this is a very global method. So you have 1 to 10, and then it asks you how likely are you to recommend this company, and the scores calculated between -100 and +100. Generally, the bottom 25 percentiles of the company are 0 or below. The top 25 percentiles are in the 70s, +70s. Generally, the average is about 32. So it's something that is useful to understand whether they are shifting to advocates and loyalty customers. And also, if another area you can use this is, if you are seeing high Net Promoter Scores, but you're not seeing a lot of referrals, that means something is wrong somewhere as well. Because if people are promoting you, the return should show in referrals. But your Net Promoter Score high and referrals are low, means there is some gap there. Second metric is customer satisfaction. Again, this is on a scale of 1 to 100. Generally, anything above 85 is considered pretty much in standard in the global numbers. Finally, customer effort score. This is quite interesting, because this is where the customer feels like how much effort that they need to put in to get the service. It's again a scale of 1 to 7. It's asked the customer, how much effort did you have to put to get this thing done? So if it's 1, that means they have to put a lot of effort. That means from the organization side, there's not been enough customer service. So generally, you should, on this scale of 1 to 7, 5 and up is like generally a good one. And it has shown that if you get someone, if you get your score from 1 to 5, your revenue should increase around 20%. So these are the metrics. Again, these metrics are gathered from surveys. So you understand, every time your customer interacts with you and you close that case, a survey goes out automatically. They answer certain questions and you get a final number on these things. And it's a very good indication of where your company is, and you can compare it to globally, because these are more or less global standards. So I'm coming to the end of my presentation. I think I just want to leave with you one image, and this is something that I've come across. Okay, imagine and this in a way summarizes everything for me as well, right? So if you imagine yourself going to a salon, a barber salon, salon, if you put from a customer experience point of view, what would you generally say would be good? Like you would say that the basic ones would be the qualified and decent hairdresser, the latest tools, and then you can put systems like appointments. You tap your card in Singapore. You would know you can put $10 in, you get a card, then you go sit in the chair and put the card. That's so you can automate processes. You can have the people, the systems, the process, everything up. But for me, customer experience is not just that. So this picture has stuck in my mind. I've seen this like 5 years ago. So it's not all, sometimes customer experience is not all that. It's just putting yourself in the, because we are customers 24 hours of the day. We are customers to other people. So you know what makes you happy or unhappy as a customer, and you should apply that, because that's really good experience. So this picture is self-explanatory, because all of us are like,
Yes.
can't use our phone. We are stuck at when we, that 20 minutes or 30 minutes. We have to just deal with it. But it's a very cost-effective, simple solution to that. And this, for me, defines customer experience. Because it's not like a whole system. And can you imagine, like, two people, if one gets this and the other one gets some latest new cutting tool or whatever, it might be so good. But this will be more, because it addresses something that we all feel. So customer experience is also, for me, it's that you do not necessarily put so much money or revamp everything, but it's just putting the customer in, you going in that customer's shoes and thinking what can make them happy. Simple as that. And I'm sure this is a good example of how it can be a very simple solution. So that's bringing it to an end. If any questions, we can, if not, we can wind it down without over a few minutes as well.
So
No, it was actually an hour. So I think well, we had a very interactive session with a lot more intense detail, despite me being here and there. But I think we did cover a lot of material, and it was a complete course. And then if you take part 1 and part 2, I think it really completes your 2 segments. And then it's really ideal for those who did take part in the first one to be present in this one as well. And then we're looking forward to rolling this video out and then taking it from there. And on that note, what I'd like to do is thank you, Sandeep. Thank you for coming in. And despite majority this time around requesting for a virtual session, and thank you, Sina, for coming in.